I'm setting an example for my kids.
I got me a side hustle.
I have more control of my destiny.
I need multiple streams of income.
It's hard work, but I'm working for me.
A job is cool, but I need more.
It's all about being self-employed. You're tuned into the world of Self-Employed and Rising with Art Taylor, where we bring you the amazing stories of people who are challenging the odds and following their dreams of self-employment. Learn from their successes and be inspired. Hear creative ideas for your business and find tips to take your hustle to another level. Welcome to this edition of Self-Employed and Rising. I'm Art Taylor, your host, and today we're going to talk about the language of business. That is the accounting and finance side of business. And, you know, a lot of businesses that start up will always try to look for ways to keep their costs down, their administrative costs down, and might want to skimp on this really important element of running a successful business, and that is the accounting and finance side of things. And you probably have heard the old adage how people can tend to eat the profits, or people sometimes think they're making money because it's coming in and not really keeping track of the expenses and the investment that goes into running a successful business. Well, my guest today is Ted Stewart, CPA and professional tax preparer. And we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation on all the important elements of managing the financial side of your business, and also talk about why it's so important to have a great accountant in your team. So Ted, welcome to Self-Employed and Rising.
Hey, thanks, Art. Appreciate you having me on your show.
So Ted, first a little bit about you. I mean, you've been doing this a long time, you know. Actually, people don't realize this, but I'm also a CPA. And I started out many years ago in public accounting. And people would always ask me, why did you choose accounting as a profession? And I would say to them, well, when I was growing up in a pretty poor background, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living, didn't have a lot of exposure to different things. But one thing I did know is that when I graduated college, I needed to have a job. And back then, Ted, if you looked into the newspapers, all the jobs were in accounting.
Mm.
There was loads of jobs in the accounting one ad section. And so I said, well, given that I don't know what I want to do, I think I'll get an accounting degree. And I actually did. It wasn't easy because I didn't know anything about business at the time, and certainly didn't know anything about finances and financial statements and all that stuff, because no one had ever needed it in my family. We didn't need financial statements. You didn't have anything to finance, you know.
No, yeah,
So fast forward, I found out that one of the most important things that I did for my understanding of business was to go through the rigors of becoming a CPA and understanding the language of business. Because if you know where the money is, you really know where the organization is going. So Ted, tell me a little bit about how you got into this profession and what it's meant to you and your clients.
Sure. Well, as a small boy growing up, I think our backgrounds were very similar, Art. When it came to stocks and bonds, the only thing I knew about stocks and bonds were my neighbors down the street, Roy Stocks, who was the fill station manager, and James Bond, who sold vacuum cleaners. So that was my limit. My dad was always a businessman. He owned a service station later on in my career. And I started working there and really liked being around that kind of thing. So once I graduated from high school, I decided I was going to go to school and try to get a degree in accounting. So I went to North Carolina Central, which I graduated in 1982. Went to work for a public accounting firm, Price Waterhouse back in the day. You may know them for the envelope, please. And worked there for 3 years and decided I didn't like it. So from that point, I jumped in the private industry and I spent about 27 years in the private industry with the likes of Philip Morris, Altria, and RJR Nabisco. And decided corporate industry was just not for me. And they were offering packages one year, and I decided, hey, this may be a good idea or idea for me to take this package and go out and start something on my own. And that's what I did. And so, in the process of trying to decide what I wanted to do, I said, oh, I enjoy doing taxes. I've been doing taxes for friends ever since I got out of college, and I seem to know what I'm doing. So let me try my hand at that. And so I did. First year I was in business, I had about 25 clients, and half of those were non-paying relatives. So first year was not very good, but I hung in there. So the next year, my business doubled. And I was like, okay, well, if it keeps doing this, I might be able to make a way out of it. So in the following year, it doubled again. So before long, I broke the threshold of 100 clients, and I could start to see true benefit of owning my own business at that point. And I really knew, I think I had made it when I got a letter from H&R Block asking me if I wanted to sell my business. So I was like, okay, this is starting to work out for me now. So I've been doing taxes in my own business now for, well, actually, I'm starting year 11. So I've been in business for 10 years and have learned quite a bit and have learned a whole lot more than I thought I would ever learn in this business. And it's been a very interesting journey.
Well, Ted, you graduated in 1982 and started working in public accounting. I did it in 1980. And I can tell you, I worked for one of the big eight back then. It was Touche Ross. And I can tell you, those firms were not very friendly toward African Americans.
Exactly
And
right.
I was the only Black in an office of 190 professionals in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I suspect your experience wasn't too much different back then, because there just weren't a whole lot of Black accountants out there at the time.
Yeah, there really weren't. My office was a little smaller than yours, maybe
Okay.
30, 40 people, but I was the first Black they'd ever hired in that office back in 1982.
Yeah. Well, that goes to show you just how difficult this part of the business can be for Black people who don't have that background, and how unique and important it is to have someone like you as a part of a business person's team. So, Ted, I know that you work with a number of small businesses. And what are some of the, I guess, some of the challenges you see with your organizations that you work with when you first take them on as clients? And what are some of the things that you're able to help them transition to?
Okay. A lot of people, especially first-time small business owners, they just jump in and start doing things, and they realize, okay, well, I got to get my taxes filed at year end, and I guess it's time for me to find an accountant or tax preparer now. And at that point, it's a little bit too late, because there's some things that you may have wanted to put in place up front before. Biggest drawback that I see is they don't have separate bank accounts for handling their transactions, so they can keep abreast of what's going on in the business. So that's the number one thing that I see. Secondly, is the establishment of the proper business type. What meeting with a CPA will do up front is it will let you determine how your business should be structured. One of the most confusing things for new people that I see is they get an LLC and they automatically think, hey, I got an S Corp now. But all the LLC does, and you probably know this very well, Art, is just provide a structure for limiting the liability that that company is exposed to. But from that, you have several options that you can go in terms of how you prepare your taxes. You can be classified as a sole proprietor. You can be classified as an S Corp, or C corporation. And for most of the clients that I deal with, I've only had one in the last year that I recommended a C corp for because they wanted to do some things that were a little different than a lot of folks I know that do, and they wanted to be able to show as little income as possible that was coming to themselves. So I say,
So Ted, let's take a break right now. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the different business structures because a lot of people don't even know that they're available. So let's take a break right now. When we come back, let's get into that.
Sure. Okay.
I'm setting an example for my kids.
I got me a side hustle.
I have more control of my destiny.
I need multiple streams of income.
It's hard work, but I'm working for me.
A job is cool, but I need more.
It's all about being self-employed. You're tuned into the world of Self-Employed and Rising with Art Taylor, where we bring you the amazing stories of people who are challenging the odds and following their dreams of self-employment. Learn from their successes and be inspired. Hear creative ideas for your business and find tips to take your hustle to another level. Welcome back to this edition of Self-Employed and Rising. And I am Art Taylor, the host. And along with me today as my guest is Ted Stewart, CPA. And Ted, before the break, we were talking about different ways businesses can be structured,
Mhm.
both to avoid liability issues and also to better manage taxes. And I was saying up front, Ted, that one of the things that small businesses and maybe businesses that just get started don't think about right away is getting a good accountant. They say, well, maybe I'll wait until I start really earning some money and then I'll go out and get an accountant. But this is one great reason why you need to get your accountant set up right away before you even get going with your business. Would you agree with that? And let's talk about that and some of the structural issues that business owners ought to consider when establishing their business.
Sure, I totally agree with you on that, Art. Basically, there are four different types of business structures that I would recommend for a person getting started. One of them is just simply a sole proprietor. That's the easiest thing to set up. You really don't even need to have an LLC to do that. You can use your own tax ID. Very easy to get into business, not a lot of reporting requirements, anything like that. And you can make money with that. Okay. But ideally, if you're getting involved in any kind of business that has potential risks or liabilities associated with it, where you could be sued by someone, then you're going to want to establish a LLC or limited liability corporation. Okay. And that will shield your personal assets from those of the business in the event that you do something that somebody decides they want to sue you for. Um, in terms of the reporting or tax structure, you can go a number of different ways with that LLC. You can still report as a sole proprietor if you want, but you can also elect to become an S Corp. And the biggest difference between the S Corp and being a sole proprietor is that you're able to shield a portion of your income from self employment taxes. And self employment taxes are essentially Social Security and Medicaid taxes that you pay as an employee. What happens when you become a sole proprietor is you're now the employee and you're now also the employer. So you pay both portions of those. So it amounts to about 15.3% of the money that you earn from taxable income that gets taxed as self employment taxes. So if you make $100,000 as a self employed individual and you will get taxed 15.3% on that. So you pay taxes of $15,300 on those monies. Now, if you shift your business structure from that of a sole proprietor to that of an S corp, it allows you to avoid self-employment taxes on a portion of your income. So let's say that you made 100,000, you decide that a reasonable salary for me for the year is going to be $50,000. So now you've been able to shield $50,000 that's remaining from self-employment taxes at a 15% rate. So that now saves you $7,500 in taxes for the year by simply making that change in your business structure. Okay.
Now,
Now,
see, what you just said is going to save somebody a bunch of money. Now, they don't really know exactly what you said because they probably heard it for the first time and they're like, whoa, let me play that back again. I need to hear that. But the important thing here is this is how a good accountant can help you. This is why it's so important. Because
okay,
if you don't set it up right, you're going to end up paying taxes that you may not have to pay if you set your business up in a different way. So, this is really important information that you're sharing, Ted. And the message that I want to drone into every business owner's ears is start early in your planning to start your business. Let reaching out to a good financial person, an accountant. They don't have to be a CPA. They just have to know what they're doing. CPA
exactly.
is great,
Mhm.
it's great to have a CPA because there's certain standards that CPAs have to operate within. But you need somebody who understands the business landscape and who can help you. Now, Ted, you also talked about the importance of managing the liability of your business.
Mhm.
That's a separate issue.
Yep.
And there are a number of things business owners need to do to make sure they're managing potential liability from lawsuits and other things. The structure of your organization can
Mhm.
obviously help with that.
Yep.
But then there are things like insurance too, right?
Mhm.
Because
Correct.
things may happen that you're still going to have to pay just to get your business back online if certain things occur. But also, you should be thinking about what might happen if there's a disaster or something, and you want to make sure that your business isn't interrupted by that, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you definitely need to have a contingency plan in place to cover disasters. With all the things that are happening with ransomware that's occurring nowadays, and people breaking into folks' systems and putting them or making them hostages of their own data and demanding payment. You want to make sure you got very good controls in terms of not allowing access to those systems, but you also want to make sure that you got your systems adequately backed up. And then the other side of the thing, having the insurance, unfortunately, stuff happens. And when it happens, you want to make sure that you are protected and you're able to protect the assets of your business. So both very
Yeah.
important things are.
Risk management, right? We
Yes.
can't eliminate risk, but hopefully we can manage them and still conduct our business well.
Sure.
So Ted, let's talk about the bookkeeping side of things,
Okay.
and helping people understand if they're actually making money. Because,
Sure.
really novice business owners might not realize that simply because you're bringing money in doesn't mean you're actually making money, right?
You're exactly right.
And
And
you really need,
I've had a couple of clients that came to that realization when they came to me and started working. And I remember a conversation I had with one of my clients, and he looked at how little bit of money he was making. He thought he was doing okay. So I asked him, I said, how many hours are you putting into your business a week? He said, oh, about 20. So I said, that's about, 1,000 hours a year. And you made $5,000 this year. So that's about, $5 an hour maybe. Is that really the way you want to be utilizing your time? So I was like, either you need to find another business venture or you need to raise your fees because you're not making enough for the amount of time that you're putting in. And that's the kind of thing that I can help people with.
yeah.
A lot of them say, well, my bank account's growing, but it may not be what you think you should be earning for the amount of time that you are devoting to that business. So that's one of the things I help them with. Also, a lot of times when you see those transactions coming in, when you're analyzing this stuff on a monthly basis, you're able to say, oh, hey, whenever you do something like this, let's talk about how you structure that transaction, because how you structure it could have a tremendous tax benefit for you. If you're thinking about buying a new vehicle and you want a really nice vehicle and you go out and buy one and the vehicle weighs 5,900 pounds. Well, you're currently allowed to deduct 50% of that vehicle in year one and then depreciate the rest of it over the remaining years. But if you'd added another 100 pounds of weight to that vehicle, it would throw it into another class where you'd be able to take 100% deduction for that business vehicle in year one, which could be a sizable reduction in your tax income. But knowing that kind of stuff up front in advance allows me to, advise you on what makes the most sense in your situation. So it's very important to get somebody to look at those books and somebody that you can talk to and bounce things off of before you do it, because a lot of times after the fact, it's too late.
Yeah, and and we're going to probably take another break here in just a minute. But when I get back with you, Ted, I want to talk about banking relationships, because there are, good things that can come from banks and expensive things that can come from banks if you're not appropriately managing, your banking relationships. And, you really have to shop right for a good banker. But we're going to come back to that too right after this break. So stay with us. I'm setting an example for my kids.
I got me a side hustle.
I have more control of my destiny.
I need multiple streams of income.
It's hard work, but I'm working for me.
A job is cool, but I need more.
It's all about being self-employed. You're tuned into the world of Self-Employed and Rising with Art Taylor, where we bring you the amazing stories of people who are challenging the odds and following their dreams of self-employment. Learn from their successes and be inspired. Hear creative ideas for your business and find tips to take your hustle to another level. Welcome back to the show. This is Art Taylor, Self-Employed and Rising's host. And with me today is Ted Stewart, CPA. And Ted and I have been having a great talk about the importance of having a great accountant attached to your business, not only after you get started, but even before you get started. And so, Ted, when we took the break, we were talking about the importance of establishing great banking relationships. And I know this is also something that you probably advise your clients on. What do you tell them about banking?
Well, you want to develop that relationship with that bank early. Somebody that knows your situation, knows what you're trying to accomplish, and is willing to work with you. A lot of times when you start out in business, you don't have the income to show, and banks are very reluctant to lend money to new businesses, especially if you don't have financial statements in place that show how much you have done in terms of earnings. So it's important to establish that relationship probably the first year or two that you're in business. If you're trying to obtain money or loans from a bank, you may be able to get it in the business's name, but they're going to make you do a personal guarantee on it because they want to make sure that if something happens, the business doesn't make the amount of money that they need to and it goes under, it can go after someone else to pay back that loan. So probably not a lot of ways around that. At least I haven't seen that many ways around it. But once you have shown a good track record and that you're making monies and you're developed a credit rating, maybe you've got a Dun and Bradstreet rating, or just the different transactions that you've been able to get from various places, credit cards or minor debt arrangements with other company. It makes you look better in the eyes of that bank that you're trying to develop that relationship with, so that they'll be willing to lend you money. But once again, it's very important to have that financial statement at that point that shows, hey, this is how you've been performing. It's also sometimes very good to have a business plan pulled together that will show what you're projecting to do for the next 3 to 5 years, so they can see that, hey, this person's got a really good model in place and I can buy into it and I can see how this thing is going to work. And based on his previous track record and where he's headed and his thought process about these things, I think we can make this person a loan so that he can get his business up and running. So, that business model, developing that relationship, and then having the financials to support what it is you've done and where you're going are very important.
Well, Ted, you mentioned how important it is to establish that banking relationship up front. Mm-hmm. And here again is another reason why you need to have a good accountant up front. Because when you're establishing that relationship up front, you don't have financial statements. But what you can have is a projection of what you plan to do with your business. Mm-hmm. You can sort of project financially what your plan is and how you intend to go about it. And key to any business plan is a financial projection. Well, who do you think is going to help you prepare that? Your accountant. Your accountant's going to be the one to sit down with you and help you budget things out and project what your expenses and revenues are going to be, and help you rationalize or at least produce in a reasonable way that people can believe is plausible for you to predict your sales and other expenses. Most people don't even think about what to charge. Knowing what to charge, you need your accountant to help you figure that out so that you're covering your costs. But once you have that projection, You can then go to the bank, and even if they're not ready yet to give you a loan, you establish a baseline with which they can begin to compare your actual expenses against later on, so that when you do come back, you have something that they can kind of say, all right, this person's on the ball. They gave us a projection. We're looking at their financial statements each month, and it looks like they're hitting it. Or if they're not hitting it, they have a reasonable explanation for why. And so, Ted, tell me about how you go about all that.
Okay. Well, the first thing is to develop the rapport with the client. Talk with them about what they're trying to do with their business. Then, you question them in terms of some of their assumptions in terms of the growth model, expense models. A lot of times they haven't thought about it. So then, I will help them develop those assumptions. Okay. Well, what do you think is reasonable here? How many new clients do you think you can pull on board each month? Okay. And then I have models that I pull together for them, and I'll show them, okay, well, if you do this many clients a month and you're charging this much money, and your expenses associated with this thing are going to be roughly in these ranges based on that type of or number of clients that you have, this is what your bottom line is going to look like at this point. And then we move over to the next year with a 10% modest growth rate, and here's what it looks like, and so forth. And then you can see, wow, okay, this can work. I can do this. Yep. Or they'll say, oh, wow, I got to go back to the drawing board on this because I can't survive off that kind of money. But
Right.
So that's my approach. Work with them to develop that projection, help them to develop the assumptions, and then pull it all together, let them see what it looks like, and then if we need to, we go back and tweak it. But the big thing is it's got to be realistic. You can't go in here and tell somebody year 2 I'm going to grow the 200 clients, and you got 5 right now. They're going to want to know how you're going to do that. And so, like, maybe you might be able to do that, but you're going to need to have some kind of marketing programs in place that they can believe in and say, okay, if you're going to do that kind of marketing, makes sense. Yeah, we think you can get that kind of growth, but you just can't go and pull pie out of the sky and expect to be able to get that money from that bank.
Now, Ted, banks will also have ways to help businesses get financing. I think there used to be, I don't know if there still are, you can tell me, but SBA programs, Small Business Administration loans, that you could get, if you establish that relationship with the bank would actually process those applications. You still would need what you talked about earlier, a personal guarantee. But at least there may have been, I don't know if there still is, this source that you could go to get some amount of money to get your business going, and really valuable source. Are you working with, is that program still around? Are you still working with some clients on that?
Well, most of the clients I know nowadays, because of COVID, the SBA has become a much bigger part of lending monies to businesses. And you don't have to go through the middleman, which is a bank, any longer. You can go directly to the SBA and seek out those loans. But, once again, you still got to have your shop in order. I mean, last time I looked, I want to say they were giving out loans of $1 million to companies. But you have to have the financials in place. You have to have certain amounts of resources available to yourself and income, and be able to basically show that if something went south, you'd be able to repay that debt. But SBA is a great source for getting business loans these days.
Yeah. Well, there's also equity out there, but we can talk about that a little bit. But all of this requires good record keeping and the maintenance and reporting of regular financial statements. Those are going to be the key to your ability to talk to any financing institution. Remember, they all want to hear about what you're planning to do, but they want to see the numbers.
Yes.
And if you don't have the numbers, you really can't have much of a conversation with them. And many business owners are not accountants, and that's okay. You don't have to be an accountant. That's why people like Ted are around, because they can help you with that. And you'll probably say, well, I don't want to pay somebody to do this stuff. It's not directly on point with what I'm needing to do right now. But if you're going to ever grow, you have to have regular financial statements, and not just something that's written down on a sheet of paper that you drafted, it's got to be done in accordance with certain financial accounting standards that a bank and other financial institution can actually read and understand. So we need to I can't emphasize this enough, how important it is. Now, Ted, real quick before we head to our final break, I want to talk about the other services that banks offer, particularly on the retail side. Things like, well, what happens when I want to collect a payment? What do I do? How do I go about billing people and having that deposited in the bank? And what kind of services banks offer for that?
Sure. Okay. All right. Yeah, there are a number of banks out there that will act as your receivables person. They will collect the monies for you, deposit it into your accounts, and handle it like you would. Now, of course, there's a fee for that, and you have to weigh: hey, is the fee that they are charging me reasonable, or would I be better off to bring this in house and do it myself? If you're just getting off the ground, you're probably going to say, yeah, it might be costing me a little more than what I could do it for myself, but that's something I don't have to worry about. I have a structure already in place. I will let the banks handle it. So that is, one of the services that a lot of these banks or organizations are providing to businesses now. So it will help streamline your process and make your reporting a little easier as well.
Yeah, I just think that people need to make sure that there's so many different ways of getting paid, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we can pick that up on the other end, but there are credit cards, there's Venmo, there's PayPal, there's so many different ways to get paid that people need to care about and understand what the costs associated with those are. So Ted, when we come back in our final episode, our final segment, let's pick up on that and make sure that people are getting the most out of their payment sources or the payment systems. Okay?
Yeah,
We'll
sure.
be right back.
All right.
Time. It has a different meaning in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It goes backwards, forwards, it stops. St. Croix is rooted in history. So much of it still remains untouched.
I remember running on these streets as a kid. This shop was right down there. It opened the same year I was born. This is where the original Crucian hook was born. It's the symbol of these islands. And I wanted to have my hands in that very same history. I want to be able to pass it down to my family while still putting a new spin on it.
The U.S. Virgin Islands, we have an amazing culture that developed over time from all over the world.
St. John feels so untouched. Being underwater is like another world. There's no worries, there's no stress. I can just escape. This is my happy place. My passion for scuba diving came at just being fascinated with the water and wanting to be a mermaid. And this is the closest thing I can get to achieving mermaid status. Canadians just love being outdoorsy. We live for adventure, so we love anything hiking, being on the water, diving, snorkeling, and St. John has it all.
It's like some spirit is protecting the island and keeping them raw. The Makajumbi watches over the island. From up there, they keep the evil spirits away. The nightlife in St. Thomas is absolutely amazing. There's always something going on. Everyone comes together to dance and catch a vibe. We're always celebrating. We celebrate freedom, culture, the food, the smell, the music. It's always a celebration. The people here are probably the most priceless thing because they keep the culture going. There's so many different influences on these islands. Food from all kind of countries coming together in new dishes. All of us came from somewhere, but all that we call this home. The VI is a new melting pot. This is where the past and the future comes together.
I used to watch BET, MTV, VH1, now I watch Tempo. Soca, Calypso, Reggae Dancehall. Don't stall, better get tuned in to the tempo. Don't have cable, they got an app. Go to your app store, download that. Whether it's tourism, cuisine, or the social scenes, if it ain't Tempo, it's a rap. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. Mr. Latest in Caribbean news? Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too? Tempo. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. Mr. Latest in Caribbean news? Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too? Tempo.
I'm setting an example for my kids.
I got me a side hustle.
I have more control of my destiny.
I need multiple streams of income.
It's hard work, but I'm working for me.
A job is cool, but I need more.
It's all about being self-employed. You're tuned into the world of Self-Employed and Rising with Art Taylor, where we bring you the amazing stories of people who are challenging the odds and following their dreams of self-employment. Learn from their successes and be inspired. Hear creative ideas for your business and find tips to take your hustle to another level. Welcome back to our show, Self-Employed and Rising. I'm Art Taylor, your host, and with me today is Ted Stewart, CPA, and Ted and I have been having a really great conversation full of really important information for any business owner to help them appreciate the value and importance of having a great accountant associated with their business. Not only once you get started, but after you get started and before you get started, you need to have a great accountant associated with your work. So Ted, in this final edition, this final segment of our show, I want to talk about getting paid. People are in business to get paid, and you can go ahead and earn the work, earn the business, and now you got to track down the money. So what are some of the best ways that businesses can think about getting paid? It's not as simple as you think. What do businesses need to do to think about that and getting paid?
Okay. I would say a lot of that depends on the size of the payments that you're receiving. If you're dealing in a lot of clients, but they're paying you, say, less than $1,000 of transactions, processes like Zelle that are offered by the banks work really well. Cash App works pretty well for these smaller transactions. You also have Venmo, which is pretty good. And the younger people like Venmo for some reason because they can tell their friends what they're doing. And then you have the just left my tongue there, but you have PayPal. Yes, that also is available for use. Probably my favorites are Zelle and Cash App for the type transactions I do, because neither of those companies charge fees to process these transactions for you. It allows you a very good audit trail so that if you were ever to get audited, you could show auditor your records of the income that's coming in. What I do suggest for people that use those sources is that periodically they transfer that money into their primary business bank account so that you now have all the transactions that relate to your business in this one account, both your spending and your income. Okay. And then once again, you got the supporting ledger from those accounts, the PayPals, the Cash Apps, and the Venmos, that show all the details that went into making up the deposits that you did. So that's the way I would suggest it. With PayPal, when you're doing transactions through them, PayPal usually charges a fee, and that fee runs about 3% for PayPal. Okay? So not a huge amount, but with Cash App and Venmo, once again, they're none. Okay. The other thing is, using credit cards. Great source if you want to get your money really fast. Credit cards is a great way to go, but these credit cards, they're going to charge you a fee also, roughly 3% for Visa and MasterCard, and about 5% for American Express. But this provides a convenient way for you to get your money and reduces the risk of somebody stiffing you if you're accepting checks. Also, with credit cards, you're going to be able to do a lot larger transaction amount with those. If you're into a business where your typical billing is $2,000 to $5,000, and you're probably going to have to do it via credit card or check at that point. So, did I answer your question?
No, I think you did very well. I think, getting paid is key.
Yeah.
And also just little things that an accountant can do for you is not a little thing actually, but helping you prepare bills.
Yeah.
A billing system, right? You got to send a bill before you can actually get paid. Now, some businesses on a retail side, that's instant.
Yeah.
But in other cases, you got to do the work, then you got to send a bill out,
Mm-hmm.
And so, making sure you get that done.
Yeah. And what I would suggest for businesses, you probably need to look at an application like QuickBooks. QuickBooks does a very good job of allowing you to bill your clients. But, what I will tell people, QuickBooks is an excellent project, but, if the data going into it is not accurate or correct, the data coming out is not going to be accurate either. So you want to make sure you know what you're doing and get assistance with that in the event that it gets a little bit above your head.
Yeah, and also establishing the chart of accounts so that you know where things ought to go, right? You can't just put everything in the same account.
You definitely can't do that because the IRS doesn't want to see everything that you do show up under business equipment.
Right.
You got to be able to break it out, So those are things that you want to do to make sure the billing is handled correctly, as well as, the income that you're recording.
Well, Ted, we have a few minutes left. And what I want to do with this last few minutes is just ask you, in your experience, what were some of the more, I would say, significant ways you've been able to assist some clients? And what are some of the really great outcomes that you've seen over the years with some of your clients?
Sure. Okay. As I mentioned to you earlier, when I first started that first year, I had about 25 clients, and like I said, half of them non-paying relatives. And I was lonelier than the Maytag repairman, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So the first thing I decided I had to do was be able to differentiate myself from a large pool of available tax preparers that were already out there and doing work for the clients. And I'll tell people, I don't knock the H&R Blocks of the world, the Liberty Tax, the Jackson Hewitts of the world, but the issue that I see with most of those companies is that if you go into that door and you aren't making $200,000 to $300,000 a year, you get the person who is been trained for about 2, maybe 3 weeks on how to prepare tax returns, and pretty much all they know to do is to input information into the system, and they don't ask any questions. So that's one of the things I really pride myself on, being able to probe and ask questions about my clients in terms of what's going on in their lives, what are they doing, any issues or things of that nature. If I see something that probes me a little further, like some particular type of debt, I'll ask more deep and probing questions. And a lot of times by doing that, I'm able to tailor a approach for my clients that allows them to save money. So I think that's one of the things that I do well that a lot of my competitors may not do. The other thing that I did initially to set myself up apart from other clients is I offer flexible hours because I'm a night owl. And a lot of people work during the day and they can't go to the Jackson Hewitts and the H&R Blocks during the day. So the fact that I tell people, hey, you can come see me after 6 and I'm open till about 9 at night. Oh, I got several clients that took me up on that. Oh man, I don't even have to take time off from work, So that helped me quite a bit in terms of building my client base.
So Ted, two things that you would tell anyone who's in the market for an accountant to look for when they're in the market. What are you looking for in your accountant?
Okay. First of all, I'll tell you, do your homework. Okay. You can go out and research a person online and see what they're doing. The IRS actually has a website that lists people who are registered on their site as far as tax preparers, so that you're dealing with somebody that's authentic, that's been in the business for a while. The other thing you want to do is you want to develop a set of questions that you want to ask that person and determine how they respond to it. And if the answer sounds reasonable or something like, oh, wow, this is great, I didn't know that was the case. Or if they sound a little suspect, then you may want to shy away from them. I'm amazed now at the sophistication of some of the clients that come to me now and the questions that they ask. And I was like, hey, that's a really good question. Well, this is how I would answer that. And when I'm done, it's like, oh, okay, good answer. So I've been able to build that.
We're going to leave it right there, Ted. I really appreciate you giving us this time. It's been a great show full of informative information about how to keep your financial operation strong in your small business. And Ted, I know we're going to get you back at some point to get into some of these more details at another time. But to all our listeners, I thank you for tuning in. And I hope that you will find us in next week for a new show. And I'm sure we'll give you some additional information that you can use to power your business. I'm setting an example for my kids.
I got me a side hustle.
I have more control of my destiny.
I need multiple streams of income.
It's hard work, but I'm working for me.
A job is cool, but I need more.
It's all about being self-employed. You're tuned into the world of Self-Employed and Rising with Art Taylor, where we bring you the amazing stories of people who are challenging the odds and following their dreams of self-employment. Learn from their successes and be inspired. Hear creative ideas for your business and find tips to take your hustle to another level.